Hey guys, how's it going? So I know it's been a long time since my last upload and I do apologize for not being too active on here. But here I am with a quick little update, just letting you know that, I am still alive and I've not abandoned this channel. And while I'm at it, let's just also create a quick little tutorial on Node.js. Okay, I can tell you though that I am working on a big Node/Express.js tutorial, and we will also include MongoDB with it. I will upload it in about 3 to 4 weeks time, but for now, all we're doing is just creating this little application that fetches the weather data from a weather API and then displays it right here in the terminal. So the purpose of this app is to give you a basic overview of how Node.js works without any of its frameworks like the Express.js. Right, so before we dive into it, let me just give you a quick demo of how it's going to work. Okay, so here I've got my terminal window open, and essentially all we do is we type in a little command and then it returns the temperature of a given city that we type in. So if I say node space src/app.js, and then if I type in the name of the city, I'm just going to say Manchester because this is where I am, comma, the name of the country, which is the UK. So if I press enter, we get it is currently 7.96 outside. So you can see it is a very basic application, but if you are a Node.js beginner, you are going to benefit greatly from it. So stick around for this one. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get started. Alright, so to get started, I'm first going to navigate to my desktop because this is where I'm going to be creating my project folder. So cd, desktop, and then here I'm just going to create a new folder. So mkdir, which is the make directory command on Mac, but you can also just left click on your screen and just say new folder. So make directory, and then I'm going to name it node-weather. Perfect. Okay, so first things first, let's open this folder into a code editor. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag it on the top of my Visual Studio Code icon. And once it's open, I'm just going to create a new file, call it app.js. And within there, just to make sure that everything is working fine, let's just console log this very handy message saying working. Press save. Now, so we first need to navigate to this node-weather tutorial project folder. So cd and then node. Oops. There we go. And then the file that we have inside of our code editor is called app.js. So to execute any of the files that you have locally on your system using Node.js, all you do is you type in the keyword node. So this is the command that's actually going to execute the file that is right next to it. So node, and then in our case the name of the file is app.js. So node app.js. Press enter and we get this amazing message that says working. Okay, so this isn't very useful to us because we don't want to print this working this statement in our terminal. We want the weather, okay? But for the weather, we first want to obtain the URL that we're going to make the request to. So how do we do that? So to grab the URL, we're going to use this awesome website called openweathermap.org. So just a quick side note, I remember that in my first ever React tutorial where we created the weather application, I do remember how much shit you guys gave me for not showing you how to actually obtain the URL. So here I am trying to fix my mistake and actually showing you how to, get the URL step by step, and then we will get to actually writing some code. So first of all, when you visit this URL, it's going to ask you to either sign in or sign up. Once you've done either of these steps, it's going to redirect you to this home page where you are signed in, and then you can obtain your API key. So first of all, what you need to do is go to this API key section, and this is the API key that you need. Please don't steal mine, create your own. It's only gonna take 2 minutes. So go ahead and copy the key. Again, not mine, copy yours. So once you've done that, then go to this API section. And here, this current weather data is the one that we are going to be working with. You've also got a bunch of other options like the hourly forecast, 16-day daily forecast, but we don't really need that. So go ahead and click this API doc. Once you've done that, scroll down a little bit and then you will see the URL that we're going to make the request to. So there are 2 URLs here. We're going to be using the second one because this contains the name of the city as well as the name of the country. So if I just click this, it's going to go ahead and open in a new tab and it's going to return JSON data. And this is essentially what we're going to be working with in our application. So as you can see, it's got this is the whole JSON object. And then you've got the coordinates, you've got the weather array. You can just use a bunch of options to incorporate inside of your app. But what we're going to be working with is this main object. So inside of the main, we've got temperature. So this is the property that we actually need in order to display the temperature. Okay, so next, let's go to your code editor. And first of all, get rid of this super useful statement. Press save. So we start with a clean slate. Now we actually need a URL to copy, that we can actually make the request to. So the URL is going to be this one right here. Copy it, go back to your code editor and create a new constant. And I'm just going to call it URL. Okay. And then right here, I'm going to paste my OpenWeather API URL. Okay, but this isn't going to work. Let me tell you why. So if I just go ahead and copy this whole URL, okay, and I'm going to use Postman to test my endpoint. So if you've got Postman, use that. If you haven't, just stick that in your web browser, okay? It doesn't really make a difference. So Postman is a very handy tool that you can use to test your API, the ones that you're making calls to, as well as you can test your own endpoints that you've written for yourself. If you've never used Postman before, don't worry, it's fairly simple to use. All you need to do is first download it to your computer, and once you've done that, launch it and you will get this little interface. Now here is you can make a bunch of requests. You can make GET requests, POST, PUT, PATCH, DELETE, just a bunch of HTTP requests. And most of these can be used with MongoDB. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're just going to use this basic GET request. So as the name suggests, this GET request works with the URL and then it gets the data that the URL returns. So if I just get rid of all this, paste it right here, and then say send. Let's see what we get back. It says invalid API key. Now the reason this isn't working is because yes, we copied the API key, but we haven't actually incorporated it to our URL. So in order for this to work, the OpenWeather map needs to know who you are, what kind of data you're trying to access, and this is why they provide us with an API key. And if you don't include the API key, they will not allow you to use their data, okay? So to get the API key, we need to go back, sign in, and I am already signed in. So once you've done that, just go to this API key section, copy it again. So now how do we actually include this into our URL? Well, if we just go back to the next tab, you can see that the URL from there till about UK looks identical to what we have in here, you see. But right at the end, if you take a look, this is the sample API key that the OpenWeather map provides this URL with. So it's a query string &, then APPID equals to their sample API key. So in our case, what we need to do is we need to do the same. &, APPID equals, and then paste the API key here. So now if I press send, you can see we get a bunch of data that we actually need. So it's just the same as what we have in the web browser. There is the main object, and then there is the temperature property. Okay, perfect. So now let's just go ahead and copy this URL just as it is. Make sure your API key is being appended right in the end. This APPID meaning append ID. So append means add, and then ID is basically your API key. So this is what this little query string is referring to. Okay, so go ahead and copy this, and now go back to your Visual Studio Code and just paste it in place of that. Press save. Okay, so now we actually need to find a way to make request to this URL. So let's just go ahead and do that. Okay, so how are we going to make the request to this URL? So we could use the built-in Node.js modules such as HTTP, but I'll be honest with you, the code that we write using those modules is going to be very tedious. So what we can do instead is we can install some new packages or modules that can help us get the job done. So how are we going to install a new package? We're going to use something called npm. Now, if you've not heard of npm before, don't worry. Let's just try and find out. So npm stands for Node Package Manager, and it can be considered as a JavaScript supermarket. So, and then you can go to the JavaScript supermarket, and then you can, well, purchase or buy stuff. In this case, it's new packages or new modules. So how do we actually install something from this JavaScript supermarket, aka npm? So make sure that you are inside of your project folder and type in npm install, and the name of the package that we're going to use to make request to this URL is called request. So go ahead and press enter. Now it looks like the package has been installed, but here is a warning. No such file or directory called package.json was found in our project folder. Now what the hell is package.json? So let me just spin back to the topic of the JavaScript, of npm being the JavaScript supermarket. So when you go to a supermarket, what do? You grab your items, and you don't just hold them in your hands and walk around. You either take a shopping bag with you, or you hold a basket to put all your stuff in. So this package.json file can be considered that basket. So you go to the JavaScript supermarket, you download your packages, and then this package.json file is what contains all the packages, and that's what's keeping them arranged inside of your project folder. So to get this file, all we need to do is we need to tell our project folder to initiate the npm inside of the project. So how do you do that? You just say npm init. Go ahead, press enter, and then it's just going to ask you a bunch of questions that you don't really need to answer unless you really want to. So just go ahead and keep pressing enter, and then if you want to credit yourself, just go ahead and type in your name. I'm gonna say my name in front of this author, and there we go. So once you've done that, go back to your text editor, and I'm just gonna open up my file tree. And here you can see we do indeed have a package.json file. So if I go ahead and open it, there we can see the request package that we downloaded from npm. And now we're actually ready to use it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my app.js file. And here is where we're going to actually make the request to this URL. Okay, so to actually use the package that we've just installed, we first need to import this into our app.js file. Okay, because just because we've installed the package doesn't mean that it's ready to use anywhere inside of our project folder. So in this app.js file, what I'm going to do is I'm first going to import the request package that we just downloaded. So to do that, I'm going to create a new constant and I'm going to name it request, and I'm going to set it equal, which if I can just spell request, that'd be great. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to set it to a built-in Node.js method called require. Again, if I can just spell that, that'd be bloody brilliant. There we go. Okay, so require is a built-in Node.js method, and essentially it just allows you to import any packages or any of the files that you've even written yourself. So to do that, you type in require followed by a pair of parentheses, and inside of it just open up a pair of quotation marks and then type in the name of the package that you want to import. In this case, it was called request. Perfect. Okay, now let's go ahead and actually use this request package right here. So first of all, we say request, and this request is an other method that, well, has been built into this request package. So what it does is it takes a couple of arguments. The first argument is the URL that we need to make the request to, and the second argument is a callback function that's actually going to be responsible for displaying the data that we get back or any possible errors in case something goes wrong. So in our case, we've got the URL ready, so we can just say URL, comma, and the second parameter is a callback function. So I'm going to open up a function. Okay, and now this callback function itself takes another few parameters. Now these parameters are what we're going to use in order to display the data into our console. So the first parameter is called error. The second parameter is called response. And the third parameter is called body. Okay, and I'll be honest, we're just primarily going to be concerned with body because dealing with errors is beyond the scope of this tutorial. I will make sure that I actually structure an application when I release my next Express.js tutorial, but I want to keep this one fairly basic, okay? So let's go ahead and explore what's inside of these parameters that we've just passed. So if you see that there's a body here, now body, as the name suggests, is the body of the data that we're actually going to get back once the request has been made to the URL right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So if I say console.log, and let's take a sneak peek inside of what's going on in this body object. Paste it right here. And now if I go back to my terminal, so remember, to execute a Node.js file, what you do is type in node followed by the name of the file. In this case, it's app.js. So node app.js, and we do get a JSON object. So if you pay close attention, I know it's a bit messed up, but if you pay close attention, you can see that this is very identical to what we had when we made the request in Postman as well as the web browser. So here is the main object, and inside of it is the temperature property that we can actually use to display data. Okay, it's simple as that. But I don't like the format of it, so let's just go ahead and try to make it look a bit pretty. And how are we going to do that? Let's go ahead and say const, and let's set it to data. Okay, now to actually convert this into a JavaScript object, we need to parse this JSON data that we're getting back from the API. So to do that, we can just say JSON.parse, and then we can pass this body parameter right here. Okay, so now if we try to console log this data constant that we've just created, and then go back to our terminal, you can see that it's a lot. It looks much better than it was looking before. So this is the main object, and this is the temperature property that we're going to grab. But I don't like that it's being displayed in this, US format. I mean, I'm British, I'm used to seeing the metric system. So the cool little thing that we can do inside of this URL is right after it says London, UK, and then open up a query string, we can add another option. We can say units equal metric. Again, I don't understand why the US people use this non-metric system, but it's just how the way it is. Okay, press save, go back to the terminal, and repeat what we added. So now if I go up there, we can see the temperature at the moment. It is pretty cold. It's 3.09 here. Not here actually, it's in London. But we're getting a much better format now. So let's go ahead and continue. So before we even do anything else, I want to address a little issue. Here in this app, we've got our API key, and this isn't a very good practice to leave your API key out in the open. Now, for an application as tiny as this one, honestly, it does not matter. But it is a very good practice to get into, to encrypt or hide your API keys. It doesn't matter the type of applications that you're creating. It's always good to make sure that your API keys are encrypted. So we can use the core Node.js modules to hide the API key, but I'm not going to do that because that's going to take about 40 to 50 lines of code. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the JavaScript supermarket again and grab another package called .env. So .env is a package that's going to actually encrypt your API, and I will explain how it actually works. But first of all, let's go ahead and install it. So npm install .env. Press enter, and it should only take about a second or two. So let's just go ahead and open up our package.json file just to make sure that it's been installed. Yes, it is. Now, how are we actually going to use it? So before we do anything, we need to import this into our app.js file. So to do that, let's create a new constant called .env and set it equal to requiring the actual .env package that we've just installed. But this isn't where it ends, okay? We need to set it a built-in method that comes with this .env package called config. And you don't need to remember all this. This is just a basic configuration that you have to set in order to make this package work, okay? So since it's a method, you need the parentheses to actually fire it. So go ahead and save your file. And what is this actually doing? So far, we haven't changed a thing in our application. All we've done is we've installed the package and then we've just imported it into our main app.js file. So now to actually hide our API key, what we can do is we can create a new file. And this is the common convention in the JavaScript community to store all your private information in a file that ends with .env. You don't even need you don't even need to name it anything. It's just called a .env file. And here, as you can see, there is no syntax highlighting. It's essentially just a text file. But this .env extension is extremely important because this is what tells JavaScript that this is supposed to be a private file. So please keep it hidden from anybody else. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say API underscore key, and I'm going to set it equal to my API key, which is right here. Go ahead and code it to your clipboard, okay? And now back in this env file, paste your clipboard right here. Now, how do we actually make use of this API key? Well, it's not even a variable or a constant, it's just API key right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this to my clipboard. Back in my app.js file, right here, I'm going to append this API key. I'm just going to call it thing because it's not a constant or a variable, but in the context of the app.js file, I'm just going to call it a constant. So I'm going to append my API key constant right at the end of this URL. But I'm not going to use the old method to attach the strings with each other. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a pair of backticks, and right here what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a $sign and open up this object literal, and here I'm going to go ahead and paste my API key. But this is not going to work because we need to give it a couple of prefixes. Those are process dot env dot and then API key. So now if I save my file, go back to the terminal just to make sure that everything is still working fine, Node app.js, and there we go. Everything is the same as it was before, except now our API key is safe and secure. So now that's out the way, let's move on. So now that we've got all this basic configuration in place, let's go ahead and actually do something useful with all this data that we're getting back in this request. Okay, so if we go back to the terminal, we can see that inside of this object we have a main object, and then inside of it we've got this temperature property. Okay, so what we can say is, instead of just console logging this whole object, which is a bit verbose, what we can do is just say data, and then again data refers to this whole object right here. So if I say data.main, go back to my terminal and relaunch the app, we can see that all we're getting now is just this this main object. And now what we're going to do is going to drill inside of this main object, and then we're going to access this temperature property. So we're going to say data.main.temp. Perfect. So let's just go ahead and relaunch the app. And now all that we're getting back is this 2.91 temperature in London. So this is all well and good, but we need to actually give some sort of a feedback to the user. So what we can do is, instead of just console logging this temperature, open up a pair of backticks and say it's, and then open up an object literal, and here is where I'm going to paste this data.main.temp, and I'm going to say it's, and then this is the temperature, or I can say it's currently whatever the temperature is, and then outside. So now if I go back to my terminal, relaunch my app, it said it's currently 2.92 outside. Perfect. So our little app is complete for the most part. All we need to do now is allow the user to actually type in the name of the city rather than it just being, London, because who wants to know the weather of London all the time? Come on. So to do that is fairly simple. All we need to do is we can say node app.js, and then here, if I want to get the weather for Manchester, I can say Manchester, UK. But it's not going to change a thing, because yes, we are giving an argument here to this app.js file, but right here in the URL, we are still making the request for the London weather. Okay, but this little argument here, it's not entirely useless. If in this console log, instead of console logging this entire thing, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out for the time being. And if I say process.arg, argv actually, sorry. So if I go back to the terminal and just say node app.js Manchester UK, we can see that there is an array, and right here in the third index we've got exactly what we typed inside as an argument. So we can pull out this third item in the array, and inject it to our URL right here. So what exactly is it? Process.argv, and then this is an array. Inside of that is the third, or in the programming language is the second index, so 0, 1, and 2. So argv followed by a pair of square brackets and then 2. So now if I go back to the terminal, console log it again, we're getting exactly what we typed here. So now it's just a matter of actually going back to our our application, cut this out, and all we need to do now is append this right here instead of this London, UK. So just to stay organized, let's create a new constant and call it address. Set it equal to this process.argv, and now we can just go ahead and copy this and cut this out, open up a pair of curly brackets, and then paste in the address. So let's go ahead and console log data.main.temp just to see if we get back anything different. So what we can do now is let's just try with London again. So London, UK. The temperature there is 2.91, and just to change things up, let's try for Manchester. And you can see that the weather here is 6.58. So it's working fine. Now all we need to do is just, I know I said that we're not going to handle any kind of errors, but what if the user does not pass in any arguments here? What if they leave it just app.js? You can see the application breaks. So it would be nice to just give a tiny feedback to the user, just saying them, that you need to actually provide the name of the city. Otherwise it's not going to work. So what we can do is inside of this, actually outside of this request, what we can say is that if address, then return console.log, please enter an address, or actually please enter the name of the city. So at the minute it's not going to do anything because this is saying that if the address exists, then do this, but we want to flip it. Okay, we want to make it look like that if the address doesn't exist, then console log this message. So to flip this, all we need to do is put an exclamation mark right at the beginning, and since we are returning this, that means it's going to terminate the entire process of this file, and the following code is not going to run. So now if we go back to our terminal, let me just clear it out. Node app.js, it says please enter the name of the city. And if we do enter the name of the city, let's try something like Boston, US this time. And we do indeed get the right weather. And just to make the output a bit more sensible, I don't even know why I said sensible, but anyway, let's just say it's currently, and then paste this right here, outside. Okay, now as a final test, let's just go ahead and launch the app again. It's currently minus 3.91 outside. So this is all that we needed to do in this application. I know it was a fairly basic one, and if you know even a little bit of Node.js, you're not going to find it very useful. But A, I just wanted to give you guys an update that I'm still here and I do plan on keeping this channel alive. And B, I wanted to let you know that I am working on a big application that's going to involve Express and MongoDB, and maybe even some Heroku action, so we'll upload the website onto a live server. So this is it for this video, guys. I really do appreciate if you watched it right till the end. And thanks for watching, and I will definitely see you in a few weeks. Goodbye.